Hi, I am Ronna Stuller. I am the Secretary of the Green Party of Connecticut. And the first thing I want to do, in addition to welcoming everyone who is here, is to really thank all the candidates who made room in their schedule to participate at very short notice. And it really says a lot about people's commitment to getting the word out to people. And I really appreciate it. And the Green Party members here really appreciate it as well. I wanted to mention that this session is going to be recorded, and we will we'll post the video of it, hopefully before the end of the day. And the one other thing I wanted to tell people, mostly the Green Party members here in Connecticut, is that primary voting is in process. The deadline is Friday, June 12th. If you need a ballot, please email ctgreenparty@gmail.com, or you can put it in the chat in this, and we'll get one to you. With your email address, we'll get a ballot to you by way of email, or even stick it in U.S. Postal first thing in the morning. So with that in mind, I'm just going to say a couple words about the format. Each candidate will have 3 minutes for an opening statement. And each candidate will have 3 minutes at the end for a closing statement. The order for the opening statement will be Howie, Dario, David, Darlene, and Angela, which was randomly selected, and that will be reversed for the closing statements. And for the questions, where each one will have a different order. So, hi, Dario.
Hi, I just want to note that I believe Darlene is on the call as well.
Yes, she is.
Oh, yes.
Darlene is here. And when she speaks, I got a question on chat. The opening remarks are 3 minutes. So I think we should just start without further ado with the opening statements. And the first one up is Howie. So I'm going to spotlight him, and go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Howie Hawkins. I'm seeking the Green Party nomination for president. Recently retired Teamster, before that a construction worker. But I did those things to pay the bills. I've been an activist all my life since I was a teenager, coming up in the San Francisco Bay Area, civil rights, anti-Vietnam War, ecology. Been committed to an independent left party since that time. I was at the first National Green Organizing meeting in 1984 in St. Paul. Have stuck with it since then. The Green Party in New York's run me 3 times for governor. Each time we got enough votes to get a ballot line. And I think we're in a unique situation for the Green Party. Everyone can now see that the 2 governing parties presiding over this country are presiding over a failed state. We see that with the coronavirus crisis. 4% of the world's population, 30% of the infections and deaths. Trump is incompetent, Biden's invisible. The rest of the world knows we got to test, trace, and isolate, and we can't even do that. And then in the last 2 weeks, the whole world can now see that this has been a failed state for Black America after centuries of a pandemic of racism. So this is an opportunity for the Green Party to step into that political vacuum and provide leadership and direction and get a big vote and leverage as we go forward politically. And I'm really hopeful, given that we're already starting to move on some of the issues. We just had a massive demonstration here yesterday in Syracuse, the biggest in memory, led by Black Lives Matter Syracuse. 2 of their lead organizers are young women, members of the Green Party. And that gives me hope. They really did a great job. So I've been campaigning on 3 other life or death issues as leading issues. The climate meltdown. I was the first candidate to campaign for a Green New Deal Democrats took the brand, diluted the content. We got to push for a full-strength Green New Deal. Inequality kills. Our life expectancies for the working class in this country are declining. So as part of the Green New Deal, we've always called for an economic bill of rights, to a living wage job, an income above poverty, affordable housing, comprehensive health care, lifelong tuition-free public education, and a secure retirement. And then the Bulletin of Atomic Science has moved their doomsday clock closer to midnight than it's ever been, because we're in a new nuclear arms race. We got to take tension-reducing initiatives, 75% cut in military spending, bring the troops home, pledge no first use of nuclear weapons, disarm to a minimum credible deterrent, and then go to the other nuclear powers and say we want complete mutual nuclear disarmament. We'll have the support of 122 nations that agreed to the text of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. And these are things, I hope, that's an issue, should be a top campaign issue. I hope Greens up and down the ticket will put forward those anti-militarist and peace-seeking demands. So our campaign's also about party building. We have a team of lawyers helping all the states that are still facing ballot access appeal to state governments to get relief in this coronavirus situation where physical petitioning is not a good public health idea. And we've had some success on that. We're going to keep working. We're the only campaign in the country that's about to qualify for federal primary matching funds. And on the basis of that, ballot access and matching funds, I think we're building a credible campaign that the media will have to pay attention to and get our green solutions into the national debate. So with that, I'm probably close to 3 minutes. I'd be honored to get your vote in your Connecticut primary. Thank you.
Thank you. Dario Hunter.
All right. Thank you so much for having me yet again, Connecticut. It was a pleasure to meet with you in person as well some time ago. Those of you who don't know me, I'm a former member of the Youngstown, Ohio Board of Education, a former environmental attorney, and an educator. I've served as a teacher and an educational administrator. And my activism has been in education primarily for a reason, because the disenfranchisement of people of color in education is a part of the larger systemic racism that is endemic to our system. That really is a part of the fabric of the inequalities that people experience in this country. And my activism has also been engaged in anti-fracking activism, which relates to environmental racism. One of the things that distinguishes our campaign is our People of Color Bill of Rights, which is targeting each and every aspect of the ways in which people of color have been disenfranchised in this country. Yes, we have serious issues in regards to police brutality, but we also have gaps in terms of our justice system. We have redlining in over 60 metro areas across this country still, despite the Community Reinvestment Act. We have banking issues in regards to the ability of people to have equal access to our finance industry. We have issues in terms of the abuses happening on our border, educational, environmental racism, the need for reparations now, and a reparative healing process with the indigenous peoples of this country. And our platform addresses all those planks. Other distinctions include the fact that we are supporting a Department of Peace and ending the military-industrial complex, not just slicing it down to a few hundred million. You know, my major competitor in this race mentioned minimal credible deterrence, mentioned in the last forum that we had, a righteous deployment in regards to Syria. This is not language, and this is not a context in which we view things as a peace-building green campaign. We want to end the engagement with the military-industrial complex. In regards to ending inequalities, which indeed kill, we have the most ambitious COVID-19 plan out of any campaign. The Hawkins campaign has taken note and even incorporated some aspects of it. Our no rent, no mortgage, no evictions. We were the first major campaign in this green race to call for that. We are the campaign calling for $2K per person per month universal basic income, because we believe that we have to target that inequality with relief directly to everyday Americans. And yes, we support the Green New Deal, but we have the more comprehensive green path forward as well, reframing our diplomacy with the rest of the world to end the saber rattling with Russia, with China, because we must work with them in order to resolve global climate change issues. In regards to this current crisis that's taking place, which really is a long-standing crisis and genocide in this country, we are the campaign calling to defund the police and to reimagine our relationship with law enforcement entirely, as cities are beginning to do right now, but really this conversation should have taken place long ago. We are at the forefront of ensuring that we empower communities to give them democratic voice and choice, because I've seen what happens when that is taken away under the nasty state takeover of school districts that Youngstown, the district I serve, has been privy to. It is systematic. And this law enforcement issue is a large and lethal part of it. But we must bring down this present system and initiate system change. We aren't about reform. We are about fundamental system change in order to bring the system closer to our values. And one more point, after I mentioned the fact that I have been engaged in this activism and my running mate has been engaged in this activism for some time, housing rights activist, activist for women's rights, for Latinx rights, Darlene Elias, we both talk the talk and walk the walk. But one more point. Failed state, the reality is this state is living up exactly to what it set out to do. Abuse people for profit in a racial, systematic regards, but in other regards as well. And I'm glad that there are Americans, some who are not awake to this, that are awakening up. We need a campaign that's going to be able to speak to that raised awareness and increase it and move it forward. And we are the campaign for that moment.
Sorry about that. Thank you very much, and we'll hear back. David Rolde is next.
Hello, everyone. My name is David Rolde. I live in Massachusetts, the next state or illegitimate colony north of you guys. I'm glad to finally be at a Connecticut Green Party meeting. So I live on land that belongs to the Massachusetts or Nipmuc people, and I've been a Green Rainbow Party activist in Massachusetts since 2003, and I thought I was going to have 15 minutes. They said 15 minutes, but I guess that was for all the candidates, so I don't know how I'm going to get through everything. But first I want to say that I'm disappointed that you don't have all the candidates here at this forum and on your ballot. There are, how many candidates? There are, I think, 4 more candidates, and we had a debate last night on the Oregon Green Party convention with all the candidates, and it was very good. It's a way to get like all the perspectives out, and 2 of the candidates, Sudanam Moyawasifsa Curry and Dennis Lambert, actually got delegates in their election in Oregon yesterday, and the primary process has been very crooked with the PCSC and being influenced by the Howie Hawkins campaign and trying to keep some of the candidates off the state ballots and out of the debates, and it isn't fair or right. So like I said, I've been a Green Party activist since 2003. I'm a revolutionary communist, anti-imperialist, anti-Zionist, anti-war activist. I got into this to try to have a more revolutionary perspective and to call for the U.S. military to be totally eliminated, not just reduced by some arbitrary percentage, because the U.S. military, everything it does is destroying the world, and we can't have hundreds of millions of dollars going for genocide and destruction. We need to eliminate the U.S. military. I'm for decolonization, reparations, and self-determination for all oppressed people, for Africans and Indigenous people here and worldwide. I'm for independence, self-determination, and reparations for Puerto Rico. Like, I got an email from somebody in Connecticut who wanted to make sure that I said that it's not good enough, that it's just implied, because I'm for independence for decolonization for everyone, but I'm for independence for Puerto Rico and Hawaii. I'm against all the U.S. imperialist wars and regime change operations, including Syria. Like, I've been talking about how Howie Hawkins supports the regime change campaign against Syria, and I never accused him of supporting U.S. military in Syria. But at the forum last night, Howie Hawkins said that he supported the U.S. military supporting the Kurdish groups fighting against ISIS, in Syria. Of course, like the U.S. created ISIS, and he also said that the U.S. troops should have stayed there to defend the Kurdish groups, and that when Turkey came in, the U.S. should have gone to war against Turkey. Turkey is part of NATO. They come into Syria because they're working for the U.S. Like, we need to get all the U.S. troops out of Syria and the Middle East. Like, they don't belong there. It's an illegal U.S. occupation. So, like, I support the Black protests, the pro-Black protests going on now against like police killings of Black people, but the protests need to have demands, and you know, and not be like just like not be pushing against Trump. They're like, Trump and George Soros are trying to co-opt these protests to do a regime change against Trump, and putting in a Democrat is not going to solve the problem. But the main issue right now is that this coronavirus crisis was purposely created by elements within the U.S. deep state who like created some kind of virus. I don't know exactly the character of the virus, but they created this fear campaign where they have it's mass mind control, where they have Americans and people all over the world scared of this virus and socially isolating and wearing masks, and people aren't supposed to live like this. You know, it's a genocide. People and elderly people in nursing homes are being euthanized. They're forced to stay in their rooms 24 hours a day. They can't go out and go out for a walk or go to the dining hall, and their relatives can't visit them. They're alone and freaking out. And then as soon as somebody gets like a cold, they say they have COVID, and they anesthetize them and intubate them and put them on ventilators that like push forced air into their lungs, and which usually kills most of them. It's genocide, and people like so-called elective health care has been shut down, and people can't get their health care, and people are dying, and the suicide rate is up. Drug overdoses are up. This response we have to the COVID crisis that was created by elements within the U.S. deep state is killing us, and it's being used for political repression. Like, there's been no right of assembly or right to get together and have a convention. And they're doing, I'm against the contact tracing, because contact tracing it's like a way, they're using contact tracing to track protesters at the protests against police brutality now. It's just an excuse for political repression, and the tests for the coronavirus don't work. It's just a way. The forced testing is wrong, and the forced vaccination is wrong.
We'll have to go on, but some of these issues might come up again in the questions. Next up is Darlene.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
As you know, my name is Darlene Elias, and I am the running mate for Dario Hunter. And I've been a Green for about 10 years now, since 2011. And I came in as a social justice activist. You know, I was political at the time, but what really brought me to the party was championing a cause of housing, where I worked to prevent the demolition of an apartment complex that I grew up in. I am a Puerto Rican Hawaiian woman. I grew up here in the United States, but I was part of the diaspora that traveled back and forth from Holyoke, Massachusetts. Well, from Puerto Rico to New York to Holyoke and back to Puerto Rico. I travel to Puerto Rico on a regular basis. The issues that are very, very important to me are issues of housing, education, racial equality, and I am a very strong activist as well for the Puerto Rican independence of Puerto Rico. I have a master's degree in social work from Springfield College and a bachelor's in political science from Mount Holyoke College. And I do mediation during the day as my profession for the court system, for families who file civil petitions. I also do therapy on a part-time basis. And those are ways that I make sure that I give back to my community. Something else that I've done on a professional level as well is that I was a union steward for many, many years for my job. I really believe strongly in equality, combating racism and discrimination in the workplace. And I've also done work in the past with Black Lives Matter movement, organizing rallies and marches and so forth, and sitting at the table with many frontline community organizations to fight the power, so to speak. And so I was very, very ecstatic to see the developments that happened in the last 2 weeks. I think that it's the closest that we've been to bring about real, true systemic change that Dario was talking about. And I'm really hoping that we continue with that trajectory long term, that's not going to be something that's going to happen, as a fluke or as a reaction, a knee-jerk reaction, that it's something that we are going to optimize and utilize that momentum to really seek change. The issues that are really important to me right now, and one of the reasons why I'm running, is that I think quality of life issues are really important, like Medicare for all, education, housing, employment for all, universal basic income. People are very discontent right now and disenfranchised with the political system. We understand that it's rigged. It's not just broken, as everybody says. People are beginning to understand that it operates in a way that further disenfranchises and marginalizes individuals. And we need to do our part as a Green Party to dismantle the institutions in this country, not just reform them, as Dario said, but actually dismantle them and start with new institutions all over again. And that's going to take a lot of work. And in order for us to be able to do that, we not only need to have good quality candidates in the forefront, but we also need to be able to build our party and improve on our infrastructure, which needs a lot of help. One of the things that I like to see the Green Party do is reach out to frontline communities and truly engage in those communities in a very genuine and honest way. I don't want us to be about rhetoric. I really would like for us to be out there, and we need to appeal to the larger public and make them understand that we are a very, very viable party. And I think that myself and Dario bring forth a very, very strong package to the American public. I think that we are the most appealing package that the Green Party has to offer, and we're the most diverse package. And I want to say with Connecticut, to my colleagues in Connecticut, to James Flores, to Hector Lopez, to many of the Green colleagues over there that I've worked with, Cassie Martineau, and so forth. I want to thank you for all the work that you're doing. Black Lives Matter movement had a wonderful, wonderful protest yesterday in the thousands that was extremely, extremely peaceful. And that's very powerful. It's a powerful thing to see peaceful demonstrations. And now is the time for us to strategize, organize, and mobilize together. And the Green Party needs to take a role in that and be leaders. And thank you so much for considering us
Thank you.
as your candidates.
Thank you. Now, Angela.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Angela Walker. I am originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I am currently a truck driver living in Florence, South Carolina. I thank y'all for having me and having us and giving us an opportunity to meet you. Those of us who don't know you well, I come to you originally from the Socialist Party. I ran as an independent socialist for Milwaukee County Sheriff in 2014. Called myself at the time a free-range socialist. And my platform was explicitly about addressing the core inequalities in Milwaukee County that were creating crime, and that when you are systematically disenfranchising people and robbing people of resources, crime is what you're going to get. And we were able to pull 20% of the vote away from the incumbent. If y'all know who former Sheriff David Clark is, you'll know he's a very interesting individual. And so to be able to have that sort of referendum against him, and also, people who supported a platform that emphasized what was good for people and building community was extremely important, very encouraging. And so a little bit about me going before that. I was the legislative director for the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 9A for a few years. I have it tattooed on my arm. And was able to get our union to make the linkage. Our local was one of the first union locals in the country to start participating in the Occupy movement. I was active in the Wisconsin Uprising in 2011 as a union member, and as a union member who, our union was a little bit insulated because of the federal funding that our union was getting from the attacks on unions throughout the state. And so we used our platform to stand up for and with other unions. And that was something that we continued even after the Wisconsin Uprising, that I'm very proud of. I was a member of Occupy the Hood, Occupy Wisconsin. I have always been a champion of LGBTQIA matters, being that my entire circle, except one of my activist friends, is queer. I am queer. I identify as bisexual. And equity for human beings along the LGBTQIA spectrum is one thing that is extremely important to me. And I get to highlight that tonight. I don't know if y'all got the invite. I am having a Pride Town Hall where we are not just going to be talking about, all of the heavy things that we're dealing with, but also imagining our way forward now and past November. And so I'm looking forward to having that. And if you want that, then I'll find you I can put the link in the comments. And also I ran for vice president on behalf of the Socialist Party as a member of the Socialist Party in 2016 with Emidio Mimi Soltysik. And plan to lay low, drive a truck, move to South Carolina, live quietly. And got a call from Howie Hawkins, whom I have been on panels with, had conversations with, have always respected the positions of the Green Party on a number of issues, because I feel there's a natural synergy between socialism and ecological issues. I mean, if you are concerned with the rights of human life, then it follows to me as a natural progression that you're going to hold up the life of the planet and look at the ways that capitalism is impacting natural resources and non-human life, and how important those things are in making those linkages. And so when he called and asked about me being his running mate, it was a very easy yes. It was a yes. It wasn't something that I had any hesitations about as far as where our policies are concerned. Being a socialist, being an eco-socialist, those things just naturally go together for me. And so I am extremely excited about efforts in mutual aid, working with organizers who are already in the street doing the work, which is what we do anyway. Lifting up those organizers and the work that they're doing, and finding ways that the Green Party can be part of that. And building deep and lasting, meaningful relationships with the people that are in the orgs on the street doing the work and moving the things that we believe forward. And so I'm looking forward to that going forward past November, looking forward to establishing the relationships now. And I thank you for having us and look forward to talking to you more.
Thank you. Now to the questions. I think Tim is going to read the questions, and this is question 1. Can you see it?
Sure. The potential dire impact of climate change creates an urgent need for rapid transition. away from the economy and food system dependent upon fossil fuels. What steps would your administration take to implement the changes needed for a sustainable economy?
And yes, Angela is first on that.
I'm sure that you all know that our platform highlights the eco-socialist Green New Deal, which is moving people away from using fossil fuels, moving people into green sectors of work, and how it's going to expound on that a little bit later. And also emphasizing the need to not be making war on other countries with the intention of plundering their resources for fossil fuels, which are accelerating the things that are hurting our planet.
Thank you. Dario is next on this one.
Thank you. So yes, we need a rapid transition in terms of changing our present economic system and our food system and food supply. And that's going to involve this 100% switch to renewable energy, which will include a mass mobilization. We are talking millions of jobs here, folks. We're also talking about revamping our transportation grid. I believe in solutionary rail, which is going to provide clean methods of transportation, but also provide avenues for transporting this new clean renewable energy. We have some infrastructure issues to deal with as well that will be a part of this mobilization, including mobilizing to provide housing for the unhoused. Economically speaking, we are going to be changing to a socialist system. And so this is going to be a massive economic changeover, and there will be a transitional period in that regard. And as a part of that system, we're talking about a system where we will have, of course, free college, free education, basic necessities of life, food, water, housing. We will be able to provide that for all. Our present system, with agricultural, big ag's abusive nature, we are bringing that down, folks. We are going to invest in farmers, invest in organic farming, invest in the people that bring the food to table, and in community connections to provide the means for that food to come to table in forgotten communities all across this country, urban and rural. So it's going to involve building up a sense of community in places like Youngstown, as well as rural parts of a state like Ohio. We need to make changes for a sustainable economy in a way that's going to change the economic networks globally as well. When you're saber rattling with countries like China, when you're saber rattling with countries like Russia and buying into CIA talking points, you're creating a destabilization that makes it difficult to connect with those countries in order to deal with climate change. And our campaign's the campaign that is talking about the need to reframe our diplomacy and not buy into these talking points that only really serve an abusive, exploitative, capitalist system. Russiagate, the narratives on Syria, all of that garbage feeds into what prevents us from connecting with each other more fruitfully in order to save this planet together. And so to recap, we need to fundamentally change our economic system. We are a socialist campaign after all. We need to mobilize millions of people in order to ensure that we build that energy grid and that we deal with the inequalities in our country, including building housing for the unhoused. We need to change our relationship with our food system to truly honor the people that bring food to table. And of course, our campaign believes in dealing with peak meat, the raising of livestock, and the overproduction and consumption and its effect on climate change. We need to scale down our consumption. That's something that's a necessity. And of course, more fruitful relationships with the rest of the world, ending the saber rattling and reframing our diplomacy to work together as equals to save the planet.
Thank you. Darlene is next.
So there's so much that can be said about this topic, and it's really important, and I think that to piggyback on what Dario said, we really need to minimize our reliance on fossil fuels. But in order to do that, we have to provide good alternatives. In addition to that, we need to fight back against like the use of coal, for example. And one of the best ways I think that we need to do that is to fight back in Congress, right? What we're finding is that there's a lot of political interest groups and lobbying and corruption that's going on where these, fossil fuel companies are just pushing their agenda. that's one of the things that I think is really important for our campaign, is that we're looking for systems change, and we're looking for change in the way decisions are made in the government. In addition to that, we need to do what we can to preserve the planet. And, you know, the overconsumption of meat, for example, you know, is a major problem. Look at what happened to the Amazon and the fires that went on there, and the fires that went on in Brazil, for example. That was really, really intentional, right, for this braising or raising of meat. These are the kind of things that we need to take a look at. We need to take a look at the impact that the military industrial complex is having all over the world. Like, for example, we have over 800 bases in the world that are really not being used, but yet in order to maintain those bases running, they're contributing to the pollution of this country. We need to make sure that we're enforcing more regulations, right, that are holding these companies accountable that are contributing to pollution. And when I think about on the local level, I think that we need to transition from this large box economy and mass production, like, you know, Amazon and Walmart and these big box stores, to the local economy and supporting small business development and agricultural development. I know that, for example, Puerto Rico is going through this right now, is a good example of that. You know, many of the products that get shipped into Puerto Rico are subject to a tax in the Jones Act. And so the products are really, really expensive to the people of Puerto Rico. And so, you know, part of the problem is that if we were at least to eliminate that tax and eliminate the middle person and eliminate the influence of corporations and allow for the people to grow their own food and to farm their own food and to be in control of their own investments, I think is the best bet. And access to quality food and healthcare is really, really important, particularly with disenfranchised and marginalized communities. So, and that means jobs, local jobs and local support, not bailing out big corporations the way we've been doing.
Thank you. David is next.
Okay, so I agree with Darlene that we need to have like local economies, but this deep state coup that is going on now, they've shut down all like small businesses, and Walmart's own businesses like Walmart are the only ones that are allowed to be open, and the government is like creating trillions of dollars of new money that's going to billionaires to buy up all the resources that were owned by people, and we really need to oppose this coup going on. So having said that, the basic thing about my campaign is that I'm for a revolution, not a New Deal. In the 1930s, the Soviet Union was like providing a good model of a socialist country and economy, and the capitalists here were afraid there would be a socialist revolution here, so the Democrats invented this New Deal concept as a way to keep the capitalists in power, but give more crumbs to the people, so we wouldn't have a revolution here. The New Deal is a way to save capitalism, and the current Green New Deal, it's been very easy for the Democrat Party, for Ed Markey and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, etc., to co-opt the term Green New Deal, and it's their term now. I go to Green Party events and about the Green New Deal, and people from like Sunrise Movement and these like other groups that support Ed Markey and the Democrat Green New Deal are the speakers, and we need to stop talking about Green New Deal if we want to differentiate ourselves and have like a really revolutionary program. Like capitalism and imperialism and colonialism are all intertwined, and the problem we have is that we're living ruled by this white nationalist, imperialist, colonialist, capitalist mindset. And we need a revolution. We need to shut down the United States. We need to turn over all the resources and power to Black and Indigenous people. We need who have a different mindset, who like aren't about like trying to create stuff we don't need for profit and create like weapons that we then need to use in wars. Like we can't have that. We need a whole different culture with a different leadership. We need the power of African and Indigenous wisdom to lead us to live sustainably on this earth, and we need to do it right away. It's like an emergency. We're dying, and this deep state coup with the coronavirus is accelerating the process of destroying the world, and we need to overturn it. Thanks.
Thank you. Howie, next on transitioning the economy.
Well, the Green Party's had the answer for that. The Green New Deal, it's been our signature issue for the last decade. And just because the Democrats steal the brand and dilute the content doesn't mean we should surrender, because we have a full-strength Green New Deal. I've detailed a $27.5 trillion 10-year Green New Deal budget that would create 38 million jobs. It's on my website. It's a budget for an equal socialist Green New Deal. It's a detailed plan to get to zero to negative greenhouse gas emissions in a decade by 2030 and 100% clean energy. What we propose to do, and why we call it equal socialist, because we got to do through the public sector what we did during World War II, when we turned industry on a dime by taking over 25% of the manufacturing capacity of the country to arm the Allies to defeat the Axis powers. And we need to do nothing less to defeat climate change. So we're talking about a public energy system, a public transportation system, and a big sector of public enterprise in the manufacturing sector, because getting to 100% clean energy is not just producing green energy in the energy sector. We got to change how it's used in manufacturing, in agriculture, in building, and in transportation. And as part of that Green New Deal, we have a just transition that guarantees anybody displaced, like if they're working in the oil and gas industry, 5 years wages and benefits till they find alternative work. Although with 38 million jobs available, that's not going to take that long. We're talking about implementing this with community control, particularly in the communities that have been victim of environmental racism, where they've got the burden of air pollution and toxic waste. So they have control of the resources rather than running through mayors and governors who have neglected those communities all along. And finally, it has a $2 trillion component for a global Green New Deal. So we can help other countries, particularly the global South, leap out in the 19th century fossil fuel age into the 21st century solar age. So I urge people to look at that. It's a detailed plan. What we need to do is declare a climate emergency. And like World War II, when we had the War Production Board, we need a climate board to coordinate all the federal agencies and the public sector we take over to get this job done in 10 years. It can't be done with incentive to corporations to do the right thing in the market. There's just not time for that. We've got to have a public plan that implements it in the next decade.
Thank you. Next question. I gotta. Following the police killing of George Floyd, there is renewed discussion about racism in local police departments. Some in the labor movement have argued that police unions are by their nature obstacles to civil rights and civil liberties. What is your view on expelling of unions representing police officers from the ranks of organized labor? And the order for this one is David, Darlene, Angela, Howie, and Dario. So David, you're going to get spotlighted. I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay, well, my immediate reaction is that police aren't workers. They're a form of, they're more akin to supervisors. They're out there like maintaining property rights of corporations, like against the people. And so I don't think they should be unionized. I think what we the police force they're an occupation, they're a colonial occupation force in the Black and Indigenous community, and they need to be withdrawn, and we need to give reparations to the African and Indigenous communities so they can have economic development, and we need Black community control of the police. I endorse the Black is Back Coalition 19-point agenda for Black self-determination, and one of the points is Black community control of the police. People in colonized people in their community, they need to take power and have their own police force. So having is that it? Okay.
Darlene, you're up.
Let me unmute myself. Hold on. Hi, so, this is one kind of like this paradox, right? I'm a very strong union person. As I said before, I was a union steward for 7 years. And so I strongly believe in union rights. And I think that, maybe if we can make a differentiation here, a distinction here, I think that unions should serve and function at the capacity of preserving the rights of workers, but they should not be working to intervene and justify police brutality and excessive force. And I think that when we see situations like that where complaints are filed against police officers, or a police officer murders somebody, or there's a death involved with a police officer and some sort of intervention by the police, that should be immediately removed from within the police department, that there should be independent investigations, that it should trigger an investigation by the Department of Justice, right? And they should come in and also the U.S. Attorney General and determine whether or not they are going to prosecute. And I think that that's really important. There's also this conversation about the police department being used as a tool of oppression, which it truly is. I don't, if you think about the history of the institutions here in the United States, they were founded by white patriarchy. They were founded by race and hate, and like many of the other institutions. And so, we need to take a look at these institutions, and we need to dismantle, and we need to start over again. I am very much for community control and community review boards, but one of the dilemmas that I find with that is that many of these community review boards actually lack the power and the authority to implement any of their recommendations. They can put forth recommendations, but then the reality is it goes back to their local council, their local mayors to decide what they're going to enforce. And so I think that piece also needs to change. We need to have citizens come in and take a look at this. However, they also need the power to enforce.
Thank you. Angela is next. And I'm not
I'm off mute.
Okay.
Thinking about the role that police unions have played in hindering workers. I mean, we've discussed the fact that police have served to penalize people during strikes and have been actively against workers. This is something that I have also witnessed in not only demonstrations in Wisconsin, but also during the Wisconsin uprising. Police and fire, along with transit, also had immunity from the abuses coming from our government. And rather than side with the workers, police unions in Wisconsin sided with the governor who was backing other unions. I have watched police unions actively block any progress being made on police abuses. The murder of Dontre Hamilton in 2014 is one thing that I'm thinking about. and watching the police unions actively do all that they could to impede any federal or outside investigation into his murder, into what happened to him. They are actively against the people. We are seeing this across the country. We're looking at what happened in Buffalo. Rather than call out officers who are violent, visibly violent, being recorded being violent to people, you've got all of their emergency people almost stepping down in solidarity with the two officers that were penalized for it. And that was only under duress. And so if we're asking about whether police unions belong with labor, no, they don't. Police unions do not serve the people as far as workers. They are not workers. They do these horrible things, and then they want to operate as their own entities behind the shield of the AFL-CIO. And I'm very disappointed in Mr. Trumka, saying, well, we should keep them, when he's known for years how police unions actively shield people who violate the human rights of workers and violate the rights of citizens.
Thank you. Howie, you're up.
But there's no doubt that police unions have played a negative role from the viewpoint of justice. They've been strike breakers. They have policed and enforced Jim Crow and other racially oppressive laws. They've shown a complete lack of solidarity with the rest of the labor movement in a lot of instances, like during the Wisconsin uprising that Angela was talking about. But the problem is not that they have a union. The problem is that they police themselves on behalf of their own special interests and on behalf of the profits and privileges of the power structures elites. That's the fundamental problem. To solve that, we need community control of the police. So they work for us. And as workers, they should have the right to organize unions. But that's a whole different relationship. And when I say community control, I'm not talking about review boards. We've been doing that for 40 years. Has made no difference. We're talking about an elected police commission with the power to hire and fire the police chief, to independently investigate and punish officers who do have misconduct, and to limit policing to the things policing can do, like to solve crimes and apprehend criminals, not send them out to deal with mental health crises, problems in the schools. I mean, we always bring in the police to solve problems that have other solutions, and that's what this defund the police thing's about. Let's get the resources right where they're at, or like Angela ran for sheriff. Let's fight crime by fighting poverty. Now, there is an example of a police union in Richmond, California, that transformed itself when Mayor Gail McLaughlin, a Green mayor, was the mayor between 2006 and 2014. They got rid of the cowboys in the force. They told officers, you're not going to be promoted based on arrests and tickets written, but on relationships built and problems solved, because you're going to be walking beats and getting to know the people that you're supposed to be policing. The whole force changed, went from 20% people of color to 60% people of color. A lot of women got into the force. And now the president of that union lives in public housing in Richmond, because one of the programs there was that officers can live in public housing for free. The city would pay their rent. That's a very different place. And those workers, police workers in Richmond, should have the right to have a union. But we can't tolerate the unions we got now that are not in solidarity with the rest of the labor movement, policing themselves. We got to have community control of police. And then the officers who are workers should have the right to a union.
Thank you. Dario.
Thank you. You know, this is not just about the actions of police unions, which have been reprehensible. At its root, it's the abuses of the police themselves and their efforts to maintain this abusive, racist, hyper-capitalist, fascist system. You know, when we talk about defund the police, it isn't just about getting the resources where they need to be, as another candidate has said. This isn't about just shuffling money. It's about turning your back on the abuse and bringing it to an end. It has to involve, it has to include tearing down this vestige of racism that is the current policing system and rebuilding something anew. It has to mean fundamental system change. And so while we as a campaign support unionization, we support organized labor, we support organized labor turning its back on the misuse and abuse of unions to perpetuate this racist abuse that the police system, this police state is engaging in. And so ultimately, to a certain degree, this is eventually irrelevant when you talk about defunding the police and what that means, reshaping the entire system of law enforcement to have community control. Yes, but community control is not enough. The entire institution has to change. And cities are already talking about taking some of the things in that basket of issues assigned to the police in this current conception of police being public stewards for public safety, which they haven't been. They have been a destabilizing element in our society. They're talking about taking some of those elements and putting them under the control of civilian agencies, under community control. And this is a healthy conversation that's taking place. We have to talk about how we will completely reshape policing and deal with the root issue of the actions of police themselves, not just the other institutions layered on top of it, which are supporting and defending it. We need to completely rebuild from the foundation up. We got to break up the police. We have to break up the police. We have to defund their current racist, abusive efforts, and it needs to be a part of an overall platform for increasing democratic control and say and voice and choice in communities all across this country. When we say defund the police, we have to accompany that with a discussion of how we build up the strength of local communities, because what's been beautiful to see lately is that people are coming together in fruitful ways to oppose these actions, and it's taken some time to build up this groundswell. But when we have stronger communities, we will have the stronger nexus and connection between people so that they can always oppose rapidly these abuses as they happen. And that's what we need to be supporting, promoting, and defending.
Thank you. Next question. And Tim, you want to read it? Well, if not, okay. I will. If a right-wing foundation has funded legal action by 3 cisgender female athletes in Connecticut against the Student Athletic Conference because it permits trans girls to compete the same as other girls. The Department of Education ruled against rights for trans female athletes, but the federal lawsuit is still going on. Where do you stand on this issue? And Dario is first, and I'll spotlight you.
I think what they're trying to do is absolutely reprehensible. Trans women are women, and they should be able to have an equal ability to compete, to participate on that basis. And this, we have to discuss the larger backdrop behind this, especially in the context of our party. The Georgia Green Party recently issued a resolution in effect declaring the opposite of what I've just said. They're supporting this declaration and in fact says that trans women are not women, that delegitimizes transgender persons. And we as a campaign have been strongly against this. We, unlike some of our major competitors, have signed on to the Lavender Caucus's call for justice and reconciliation to oppose that effort against green values. Our values as a party are very clear. We support transgender rights, we support LGBTQIA rights, and we are against any attempt to delegitimize trans people. And that's what this is. This is an attempt to use and abuse the legal system to delegitimize trans persons, to make things less rather than more equal after all the progress that we have made. And we as a campaign are mindful of and are never going to forget, that clarion call from Marsha P. Johnson as a part of the Stonewall Uprising, that metaphorical, if not factual, first brick that was thrown. There's been so much advancement since then, but there is so much more to go. We still have a crisis in this country of murder of transgender women, particularly transgender women of color. And we need to be turning our attention and our focus towards that and away, turning our backs towards the abusive, racist, bigoted people that are targeting not only transgender persons, but people of color, all minorities in this country for unequal treatment. And we need to stand together in that regard.
Thank you. David.
Well, there is tremendous discrimination against gender nonconforming people and gay and bisexual and transgender people, and we need to protect them from violence and discrimination. But on the other hand, sex and gender are two different things, and there's been centuries of progress in getting sex-based rights for women. And you know, I support I'm totally opposed to kicking the Georgia Green Party out of the GPUS out of this issue, over this issue. You know, we have a right to talk about these complex issues, and that's what they're doing. And I have sympathy for the idea that that women's sports and girls' sports should be for biological girls and women, because otherwise biological men who you know, who are transgender and you know, feel that female is their gender, they're going to come in and win all the competitions because they have a male body, and the male body like is different from the women's body. So I think it's a valid thing for us to talk about. And then, having said all that, I think we need to focus on class-based politics, and there are transgender people and women who you know are from wealthy, privileged white families, and we need to unite based on the working class and oppressed nationalities and looking out for their rights. And we need to stop like splitting our organizations over these arguments about trans rights, while we do need to make sure that violence against trans people stops. That's a real issue. But you know, we need to consider all the issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Howie.
Yeah, when the Georgia Green Party made their stupid statement, I immediately issued a statement saying that transgender rights are human rights, and they are not in conflict with women's rights. This lawsuit is really sort of a wedge to try to get at transgender rights. It's not really about sports. And I think we'd be in a lot better position to defend transgender rights if the Equality Act, which has passed the House but hasn't got through the Senate, had passed, because that would prohibit discrimination on the basis of gender identification and sexual orientation. And I think in terms of national policy, that's the thing we really got to push at this time, so that transgender people have a legal means to defend themselves from discrimination in all areas.
Thank you. Angela.
I second Howie. One of the most important things that the Equality Act needs to be passed, the whole act obviously needs to be passed, but protecting trans rights in spaces and places like schools, like employment, housing, education, all of those things, that's important. And the Equality Act would provide explicit protections for trans people. And thinking about Title IX and its protection for where it protects trans youth in schools who are, and young people up to the college level, folks who would be competing in sports. It's just like Howie said, this is the same thing as trying to raise an issue about where people use the bathroom. And it's just a step at smacking at the trans community and, excluding them and continuing the othering of trans people. And it's not something that I support, and nothing that our campaign supports. This is a tactic to further disenfranchise the trans community.
Thank you. Darlene.
Hi, let me just unmute myself. So I wanted to say that I've held many roles within the Green Party, and you know, when I was a national co-chair of the steering committee, we dealt with this issue of trans rights, and we upheld trans rights. And now, as the co-chair of the Women's Caucus, we issued a statement just the other day that states that trans women are women. And we support that trans rights are human rights. And with that being said, we strongly support trans women being in all spaces that make them feel comfortable. You know, if an individual is uncomfortable because of being in the presence of a trans woman, then that individual themselves needs to take a look at that and process that themselves. And so, you know, with this lawsuit, what I see that is, again, we need to take guard against that. And I'm hoping for a lot of progress by the trans community in regards to that issue from state to state, because we need to push back on that. The more that they have these lawsuits and set these precedents, you know, in regards to anti-trans rights or anti-trans legislation, then it sets a precedence for other states to do the same thing. And so we really need to fight back against that as well. But I think plain and simple, like the Women's Caucus had put out there, trans rights are women's rights, and women are trans and vice versa. And, you know, I really support the LGBTQ community in our party. And I really think that what the Georgia State Party has been doing is deplorable. And we need to combat even transphobia within our own party.
Thank you. In order to finish in time for closing statements and finish by 3:30, I think we're only going to do one more question. And it is, and it says 5, but it's 4. We are now seeing the growth of a movement demanding fundamental change on many fronts: healthcare, human rights, anti-racism, climate and environmental policy, just to name a few. What do you see as the role of the Green Party within the movement, and how can we be effective in that role? And Darlene is first on that, and I'll try to get you spotlighted there.
So, you know, I think that one of the things that we do very, very well as a Green Party is we have some really, really intelligent Greens, very academic Greens. We have, you know, many people who can philosophize, intellectualize, and put down the reasons why we support certain issues in our platform. But what I think that we really don't do well as a party is campaign building and movement building and increasing visibility in the community around these issues and doing coalition building. And so that's where I see us pushing the issue is, you know, engaging communities and being a visible presence in frontline communities and also in the political sphere in Congress. I know, for example, the Women's Caucus last year of April, we took a trip down to Congress for a lobbying day. We had organized a lobbying day and we all went down there. And the issue at that time was we were pushing for public funding of elections and taking out money, you know, public fund, not public funding, but a special interest, you know, from politics. And so, you know, we need to work to be a stronger political influence to be able to get these issues passed and assert our political influence to do that. And we, in order for us to do that, we have to build as a party. Like, for example, look at what happened with Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders had a very, very large movement and a lot of people behind him, and he focused on these issues. But then when it came to sticking it out to the end, he just he bailed out. And I think he lost his opportunity to continue to influence government and Congress and the legislature on these issues of the left. And we as a Green Party need to not only build political party to insert our influence on these issues, but we need to make sure that we are not going to compromise on our values either.
Thank you. Howie.
Well, I think the role of the Green Party in the movement is to be supportive, participating, and in elections give voice to their demands. And actually, the Green Party is pretty good at that. We're known, people want us, they let us know, we show up. The thing we're not doing, and I would say most of the progressive social movements are not doing, is they're mobilizing the usual suspects. They're not organizers reaching out to the people that we want to get, that are alienated from the whole political process, that are hopeless and feel powerless that they can change anything. Working class people, 100 million of them didn't even vote in the last presidential race. So we need to be organizers, not activists. Activists go out and preach. The leaflets say, join us. An organizer goes out and listens and finds out what's on people's mind and how they can help. And we need to do that, not where the movements are, but where the communities and our workplaces are, and build relationships and friends and trust. And when people then start asking for your opinion on things, you know that you're in a position where you can then recruit them to the Green Party, because we need movements. We need a party that can link the movements into a common platform. Right now, the progressive social movements are competing for attention, for money, for bodies at demonstrations. And what we need, and only a party can do, is we're multi-issue. We got a whole platform. We're a place where people can come together in our local chapters and find their common ground. So we need to, that's what we need to do really, to relate to the movements. We got to have chapters in these communities. So when we get smeared by the corporate media or the Democratic Party, people say, no, we know those people. They're with us. We trust them. And when we get to that stage, we'll be a major party in this country.
Thank you. David.
Yeah, I don't see a movement like pushing for real change. I mean, there are people on this continent who want real change, but the movements I see, the large movements I see, are all co-opted to be about electing and re-electing Democrats, and you know that's not going to produce change. The Democrats, they want to keep the war and military and imperialism going. They support big pharma to poison us with drugs and vaccines instead of providing us good holistic health care. They support big data to install 5G everywhere, which is poisoning us, and to more and more surveil every aspect of our lives, so we have no privacy or freedom, and the government can crack down and control people at any moment and quash any movements. And they support big agriculture to keep this factory farming and genetically modified crops and glyphosate and poison pesticides. And the role of the Green Party has to be to oppose the Democrats, not ally with the Democrats against Trump, the bogeyman. The Democrats and Republicans are the same thing, and our role has to be to articulate that we need a revolution and real change. And maybe it can't come through voting, but maybe it can. I don't think. I mean, the presidential election is fake, and they're not going to let our candidate win. We shouldn't want to be selected to have our candidate be the president and push the corporate agenda and be the corporate puppet. We should use the platform to demand a real revolution so that people can rise up behind something. And we need a lot of work in how we organize the Green Party. every state Green Party I know, or most of them, are splitting and have like conservative leaderships that are driving the rest of the people out, and we need to be welcoming to like all diverse people, so and grow the Green Party, and we're not doing that now. Like as Suriname Moyo Wasiusa Curry says, we need to become an anti-racist party, and I'm going to be on a meeting with her tonight at 8. I'll see if I can find the link and put it in the chat.
That would be great. Thank you. Dario.
Yes, I love this question about how can we be effective as a party. We're talking about a number of different issues we need to attack in regards to the inequalities in this country. When we talk about healthcare, we have to talk about not just Medicare for all. We have to talk about the fact that even if you get a shiny new healthcare card, there are communities that don't have enough of a medical infrastructure. Communities like the south side of Youngstown, which I represented. We need to build up that medical infrastructure and deal with the inequalities in communities all across this country. When we talk about anti-racism, we have to talk about it across the platform. Yes, we have to have it at the front of our platform, but it has to be a factor in all of what we discuss, from healthcare to educational racism, to environmental racism, to racism in our finance industry. We have to talk about it at the forefront, and we have to talk about climate and environmental issues also all across our platform. Issues in regards to anti-racism connect directly to environmentalism, because we have environmental racism in this country, injection wells in predominantly Black neighborhoods in places like Youngstown, where they're left to suffer the effects of fracking. We have to talk about these issues as they are, not just in the squeaky clean, divorced, removed sense of these issues that some well-intentioned activists seem to have. And that's how the Green Party can be impactful, especially in this moment that we're in, where people are hungry for the truth, for the real deal that the Democrats and Republicans can never offer. And a part of that means allying with movements that are moving in the same direction. We, as a movement as well as a party, have to do that. And having that place alongside those movements like Black Lives Matter, a variety of community movements that are fighting to get some breakthroughs on this issue, is also how we bring people to the table, and we build up our party and we build up ourselves as a movement, because people find it important to see you where they are. You have to meet them where they are. And this is a challenge for our party that we need to meet better. A challenge of getting out of some of our comfort zones with some locals, and making connections with the community on a deeper level. That includes better organizing in our local communities. It includes getting a sense of media savvy, which is something I had to develop as a member of the Youngstown Board of Education, letting the media know about what you're doing and putting together those press releases and making those connections with members of the media that get the word out. And it also includes ensuring that we support our down ballot races. The presidential race is important in a number of regards for our party, but we got to support those local candidates, because they show local communities what green leadership looks like. And I've been privileged to be able to do that in Youngstown, Ohio, fighting educational racism, fighting the separation between the people and the decision-making on education that affects their children and their community. And through that, people were able to see what green leadership looks like. That's why our campaign is putting forward what we call #SeeGreensLead. We're actively supporting local candidates in Minnesota, local candidates in Utah, local candidates all across this country, and using whatever bully pulpit we have as a campaign to support their efforts, so that we will have a future beyond 2020 as a party, as a movement, where people see what our values look like in action.
Thank you. Angela.
One of the things that I have been able to translate from my work as legislative director to this campaign is the ability to build alliances and to make our platform, as Howie said and as Howie does, available to people. There are people who are supporting this campaign and supporting the ideals of the Green Party who would not describe themselves as eco-socialists necessarily. They understand issues. And one thing that I am really gratified in seeing is people are willing to join with those issues, willing to join people who are pushing those issues, particularly people who were going for Bernie Sanders and like those tenets of his platform, and see those things here. And I'm also very excited about the fact that our campaign emphasizes building relationships that matter with people and building relationships with the folks who are already on the ground in the communities doing the work. Most of my personal network is activists and organizers. That's who my inner circle is. Those are the people I know. And so being able to, bring our platform to them as something that they can embrace, and also attract people to our party where, they can see themselves here. And I tell people all the time, if this platform was not something that I could support with my whole heart and see as something that is a positive good or bring a positive good to my grandkids, and I got 5 of them, I wouldn't do it. I support this platform with everything that I have because it speaks to everything that I believe in. And I am finding that it speaks to a whole lot of folks who have never looked at themselves as socialists, do not consider themselves necessarily ecologically in step, but they're riding with it. And I think that going through, beyond November and beyond, continuing to deepen those relationships, continuing, as Howie said, to show up, to let people know what the Green Party is about, let people know you are welcome here, folks with disabilities, folks of color, young folks, queer folks, trans folks, immigrants, you can see yourself here. This is a party that is not a tolerant space, it is a welcoming space. And we welcome your lived experience and all of the things that you bring with you. And so I'm really excited about continuing to deepen those relationships, continuing to build those relationships now and through November.
Thank you. Now closing statements, and it will be in reverse state order. So Angela, you're on again. And it's, if people can keep it to 2 minutes, that would be great. So we don't make all of you take too big a chunk out of your day.
Absolutely. Again, Howie and I thank you for having us. There's a lot happening. These things, it's a lot of very big things that we are confronting at once. And I think that the thing that will bring us through it is sticking to what it is we believe and not being hesitant about sharing those things with people. Because we're at a moment where people are ready to hear what we're saying. There are more people now who are saying explicitly socialism, explicitly climate change. We have to reverse it. There is an imperative with people that I think may have been lacking even 5 years ago. And we're in a time where people are feeling that they cannot continue to be complacent, and that we can't continue to compromise because the two parties of the 1% have made it abundantly clear that they are not listening and have no interest in what we have to say. And I think, as Howie said before, the Green Party is uniquely positioned to step into the vacuum that has been left politically and speak to what people are actually wanting to hear, needing to hear, and can get behind and support. So thank you for having us.
Thank you for coming. Darlene.
So thank you so much, Connecticut. I just really feel a kinship with Connecticut, being that it's just over the border from where I live, and I participate so much in activities down in Connecticut. This is a time for third-party risings, and as you know, the world right now, and I'm saying not just the American public, but the world right now is really discontent with politics as is and politics as usual in the United States. But, more so than that, they continue to put forth candidates that are really not viable, that are doing a disjustice, or an injustice here in the United States and all across the world. And, the American voting public, they want something different. They want leadership. They want people who relate to them, that look like them, who have common life, everyday experiences just like them. And you know what? That's me and Dario. Me and Dario are the ticket that the American voting public is going to relate to the most, and who's going to be able to get that 5%. And not only because of who we are as individuals, but also because of our competence and what we bring to the table. And so I strongly encourage the Connecticut Green Party to vote for us. We are in this for the long run. You know, we've been around the party for a long time now, particularly myself and Dario as well. We both run for office, and we've done many, many things, and we are just not in this, you know, for just, how do I say, vanity sake here, to pump up our own egos. It's because we truly believe in the issues, and we're about the party.
Thank you. David.
Yes, we need a revolution. We need to shut down the U.S. military completely, and all the wars, all the bases and troop deployments. We need to shut down the United States as it currently is. We need to go back to the beginning and reverse the colonial injustices and provide land sovereignty back to the indigenous people and reparations to the indigenous people and to the African people here who were brought here and enslaved. You know, we need to end capitalist imperialism and that mindset and have a new mindset to go forward and live sustainably. But first, in order to be able to have any chance of doing that, we need to stop this deep state coup. We need an investigation, an international investigation of who created the coronavirus crisis. We need to put Bill Gates and all the other perpetrators on trial. We need to stop all the 5G and dismantle all the 5G technology immediately. We need to stop having mandatory vaccines. The flu vaccine is very problematic. We need to make sure that the we shouldn't have contact tracing because and under our current system, it's run by big data. They're already using contact tracing against the protesters. You know, we need to really stop all this stuff, and we need to have like good healthcare, like for everyone. I know, like, I'm not saying that hydroxychloroquine is necessarily the best treatment for coronavirus, but we know that it was banned for a while because scientists were doing studies, and they were really working for pharma companies that were pushing more expensive drugs. So we need to find the right treatments for everything, and we need to make sure that healthcare is available for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dario.
Sorry, it seems I was just muted. Thank you. Now, this is a pivotal moment for us as a country, and also by extension for us as a party. And what it really comes down to is a matter of trust. Trust in terms of who can end this democratic deficit and give control and power back to the people where it belongs, end the inequalities in this country that truly kill and divide this nation and contribute to a world order that has been abusive to humanity and to this planet. And you're not going to gain that trust if you are putting forward a vision that's similar to what we've already seen. If you are saying that deployments are quote unquote righteous, if you are still supporting the militaristic regime that has really put down foot soldiers for capitalism and capitalist profit and colonialism abroad, we cannot half step on this, folks. We must defund the military and end our perspective as a nation of defense, which is really offense and invasion and colonialism. We also must defund the police. It is not salvageable. It is not savable. We have to rebuild law enforcement from the ground back up with genuine community say, voice, and control. And we must put forward a campaign that puts the issues affecting the inequalities across this country and the situation that people of color have been in for centuries in this country at the forefront, at the front of the bus, not folded neatly under other headings, because we've seen enough of that lip service in this country. People are tired of it. And so our People of Color Bill of Rights addressing all of these areas as individual platform planks and putting them at the forefront is what this moment needs right now. And of course, we are an eco-socialist campaign. And so we are putting forward a true eco-socialist agenda, which includes a Green New Deal, but we are far more expansive with our green path forward, dealing with the international issues that we must address in order to cleave to other nations more tightly and build a united front against this climate change catastrophe. And that includes not feeding into CIA talking points on Russiagate, on Syria, and destabilizing our relationship with the rest of the world, because trust is indeed an issue and the world doesn't trust us right now. How are we going to work together with nations across this planet to solve this catastrophe if we don't have that trust? So let's be a part of the uprising as opposed to being a part of the hesitancy that holds it back. Our campaign is ready to do that. And to learn more about our campaign, go to dariohunter.com. You can learn how to sign up as a volunteer, how to sign up for our email list. And of course, we wish that money was not a part of politics, but for the time being, it is. So every little bit helps, and you can donate on our website. Thank you again for having us, Connecticut Greens.
Thank you. Howie.
Thank you. Angela and I are running a positive campaign, and we're not smearing other people with baseless charges. We want to come out of this campaign so we're united. And we think running 2 workers for the White House will have appeal, especially to the people that have been disengaged. And we're running in every state. You know, we get attacked for spoiling the election. Of course, we say, no, it's the Democrats spoiling the election, because they won't accept the proven nonpartisan solution the Green Party's been putting forward since Ralph Nader ran. And that is to get rid of the Electoral College and have a ranked choice national popular vote for president. If the Green Party's not in the race, that won't be raised. For us, every state is a battleground. We're not stepping down and say Pennsylvania and Ohio, where the industry's fracking the hell out of those countries, out of those states. It's only the Green Party opposing fracking in those states, not the Democrats. Anywhere we go, any city in this country, Greens find themselves fighting the Democrats when it comes to housing. The Democrats are part of the real estate developer machine that has segregated us and denied us affordable housing because they can only make more money in the upscale market. And everywhere, the Democrats are for military bloat, wars, and coups. And there's no alternative. Them and the Republicans are right like that, because you may have seen when they brought Guaido in, when Trump brought Guaido in the gallery at the State of the Union address, all the Democrats stood up to give him a standing applause, as well as the Republicans. So that's why we're running in every state. Every state is a battleground for us. We're asking for your vote. And if nominated, we're going to work as hard as we can. But you know, this really depends on us coming together and everybody playing their part, because this needs to be a movement, not just a couple candidates. And if we can do that, we can put real green solutions into the debate. And I believe in this year, we can change the whole political dynamic in this country. So look forward to working with you as we go through to November. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all of the participants. I have just, let's see, everyone's website. You can find out about volunteering, donating, all of the above. And the Green Party National Convention is going to be a virtual convention July 11th. Go to GPUS, and we hope to see you there virtually. And I want to thank everyone again. We'll be posting this, and I'm saving the chat if anyone would like it as well. And yes, that's it. Thank you to all the candidates.